Hey horror fans, and welcome back to October Horror Fest. Today we're going to review horror movie remakes versus horror movie originals. Since the early 2000s, remakes have been popping up like clockwork, and we have seen either decent films or absolute disasters. So today I'm going to discuss originals versus remakes. Okay, with films like Halloween, the original used nearly no blood, but gave a strong, scary story with very creepy music, and a frightening killer, and a lot of jumps, and some pretty effective kill scenes for the time. The remake, on the other hand, focused a lot on an origin story which should have been a prequel film in itself, and when we get to the main act, it's just a gory, bloody version of the original, and while the story isn't necessarily bad, there is obvious room for improvement, and the death scenes just don't deliver the same frightening impact the original did. Friday the 13th, the original used the killer Mrs. Voorhees instead of Jason, so it was obvious that Jason would need to be the killer in the remake. The original was famous for having frightening atmosphere, similar to Halloween, but adding very effective death scenes, with lots of gore for the time. The remake story, okay, it starts with a flashback to 1980 where Mrs. Voorhees gets her head cut off, and we see Jason grab the machete. Now, the rest of the film should have been counselors at Camp Crystal Lake being stalked and slaughtered by Jason Voorhees. And the film would have done okay, but instead they complicated the story by having an abandoned Crystal Lake and several groups of kids being slaughtered by Jason. The film is basically a hybrid of the original first four films, and it kind of works, but it overcomplicates things. And the film could be better, though it's not a bad remake. A Nightmare on Elm Street, this is an easy one. The original wins super easily. The kills in the original and remake are both effective, but the original storyline is just way better quality by comparison. While I don't mind the remake's characters, and while I feel Freddy could be better, the story is just horrible and does not work. And turning Freddy into a child molester instead of child murderer, I feel weakens Freddy's famous image. When a Stranger Calls is honestly a tough area. The original has an infamous first 23 minutes and an equally scary climax that frightened audiences, and while the killer's voice was very creepy, the entire middle of the film is a disaster that just does not work, and while a little bit of gore can be seen, ultimately it is not necessary. The killer is just not frightening enough. The original has two good thirds of a film and is a good classic, but has serious problems. The remake, on the other hand, has a very effective story and delivers a good constant flow, and removes almost all blood but instead delivers an extremely frightening thriller. While the killer's voice could use some work, the killer himself is far superior to the original's killer. Both films are good, but honestly the remake is the better of the two films. Fright Night is a cult classic and is very well liked by horror fans, and honestly a lot of people didn't like the idea of a remake, but honestly the remake was pretty damn good. Both critics and reviewers liked the story, and this one was in 3D and we had some great effects. All in all, I'm gonna call this one a draw because both the remake and original are excellent films. Okay, the biggest issue with remakes is they keep messing up with the storyline, either overcomplicating things or creating a story that is far inferior to the original. And while some films did do a very good job, most were letdowns. They need to lay off so much blood and open their brains and come up with a story similar to the originals, but with some modern feel, but keep a good quality story flow going. In closing, while horror movie remakes are not a bad idea, I feel filmmakers need to really look at the originals and think from that perspective, and look at a film like Saw and find a balance between the two. Please tune in tomorrow for the final October Horror Fest of 2013. This is the Entertainment Wizard, signing off.